Welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to be doing a CAS plus PBQ, performance-based question. We're going to do number 2 here, which is going to be on global laws and regulations. So let's go ahead and get started. This one looks pretty complex. Okay, so we're going to approach this just like we do with every PBQ. So I'm going to read the instructions first. Based on the scenario, use the drop-down selectors to determine the appropriate laws, policies, and restriction assessments based on your research and answer legal questions. Then choose which country to expand services to. Okay. Let's see. And let's read the scenario first. Okay. A VPN company in the United States is rapidly growing due to its promise to provide privacy and protection of user data and communication over the internet. VPN software encryption mechanism is at the core of its success. The company would like to expand its services to other countries and needs to determine from a legal standpoint the most feasible countries to work with first. Okay? All right, so this one's testing our knowledge of global laws, just like it says there. Okay. As the ISSO, you understand the legal standing of encryption varies in other countries. Yep. Governments usually have written laws in their constitution, articles, or charters that provide protection and the right to privacy for citizens and people. While some protect privacy and some countries don't. We know that. Countries with few regulations and only interject when there is criminal activity or to the extent of fair judicial process are ideal locations for expanding services. After doing some research and taking notes from the world map of encryption laws and policies from Global Partners Digital, this resource, I definitely recommend researching that if you're studying for your CAS Plus. Your task is to go through an internal exercise reviewing legal policies and then determine which country the company should expand its services. Okay. Really should say to which country the company should expand its services. All right. Criteria for expansion to other countries. The cost to travel to the country has reasonable/inexpensive fares. Okay. There is minimal government control over VPN services. There is no limit on encryption strength for VPNs. Okay, well, I don't know if it's going to ask us to calculate fare fees. This is a strange one here. The first, where we're going to have to make some assumptions. There's minimal government control over VPN services. We know that from our knowledge of global laws and policies and regulations. There is no limit on encryption strength for VPNs. Okay, so that's something we should also be aware of when studying for the CAS Plus. Let's take a look at the map color key. Green represents minimal restrictions. Telecommunication carriers are not required to decrypt customer communication or data. Yellow represents some restrictions. Some history of court action has occurred for unknown reasons. And red represents widespread restrictions. The government requires access and authorization to encryption and decryption protocols. Okay, so some governments have more control over their internet service providers than others. Some allow for a lot more freedoms. And some governments, like for example, China, will control all of the internet communication to any of its citizens. So it restricts a lot of apps, a lot of access to most of the internet. And different countries have different laws. So now I don't understand the first one. The first thing it's asking us to do is to consider the cost to travel to the country with inexpensive fares. Are we doing that as part of this question? I don't see anything. I don't know. I guess with that one, we have to make an assumption. I don't see anything where we see fares here. But, all right, let's take a look here. So we have some assessment colors. We have green, then red, then yellow. And then these two we have to select. Is that green, red, or yellow? Yes. Okay. Okay. That's also green, red, or yellow. Okay. Canada, Algeria, Morocco, India, South Africa, Pakistan, Ecuador. Unique laws and policies. Okay. So this is just testing our knowledge of laws within the country. All right, let's take a look at this. This is a pretty tricky question. Some of these questions are a little easier. This one's tough. Again, if you guys have any questions, email info@cyberkrafttraining.com or leave a comment. Use the chat feature. Be happy to help you. But let's dive into this. All right, unique laws within Canada. Well, we know Canada has PIPEDA for privacy. What else do we have here? Article 15 requires authorization via electronic certification or government persons. Interesting. I don't think that's correct. I gotta make this bigger. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Charter provides that everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. I think that might be right. Higher penalty. Hold on, I gotta make this window. I'm using my streaming software to read this. Otherwise, I have to look this way. So I gotta make this window a little bigger. Okay. Otherwise, I can't read it through here. It has nothing to do with the question. Sorry. All right, here we go. Higher penalty for crimes committed using encryption. Use of cryptography means or services are subject to either prior declaration or authorization. This one doesn't make sense grammatically. Use of cryptography means or services are subject to either prior to... Okay, so we have to declare if we're using cryptography. And that's a common theme you'll see with very restrictive countries. So I think the one that works here is everyone has a right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizures. Canada does a really good job of protecting personal privacy. So this one and the laws of Canada, they're not... I wouldn't say they're similar, but they kind of line up with U.S. laws in that there is a lot of personal freedoms. So I think this one is the best choice. Let's take a look at Algeria. Algeria also, this is a green assessment, so we can make the assumption here, even if you don't know anything. I mean, I know quite a bit about Canada telecommunication laws. Go figure. But because it has that green assessment, we can assume that the laws are a little more relaxed. So we wouldn't pick, even if you didn't know anything about Canada, you wouldn't want to pick something like this, or this one I would adhere to something like a yellow assessment. This one might be yellow or red, I would say. So I think this makes sense. Let's look at Algeria. I don't really know too much about Algeria. Article 21 requires encryption authorization via electronic certification or government persons. That sounds very restrictive to me. Export or import permits. The Export or Import Permits Act allows the government to establish an export control list. That could be similar to EAR within, or ITAR within the U.S. government, but it doesn't really apply to what we're doing here. Internet service providers may not deploy bulk encryption on their networks. Okay. That is very restrictive. So I don't think that would correspond to green. Laws contain provisions to decrypt data when subject to judicial authorization for criminal activity. Now that's pretty common. If there's evidence of criminal activity, you would want to decrypt that communication. So I think I'm going to go with the last one here. I don't really know, but that one kind of adheres to what I would say would be a green assessment. All right, so let's go to the other side. Now we're going to red. Morocco. The supplier use of cryptography without prior declaration or authorization is a criminal offense. Now that sounds pretty restrictive. Charter provides for specific rights to encryption and security of data. That's pretty vague. Cryptography providers are not required to register encryption services. Now that would be something I would see in a green assessment, I would think. Constitution generally requires law enforcement to secure prior judicial authorization. That's also something I would see in green. So this one doesn't really make sense to me, so let's go with the first one. Okay, India. Again, this is very restrictive. Article 52 provides that the service providers must ensure the secrecy inherent in telecommunication services. That doesn't really make sense to me. That could just be a red herring. Who knows what Article 52 is? Court order compelling an individual to provide passwords violates their constitutional rights. That's something I would see in like a green country. That's upholding personal liberties. Information Technology Act 2000 allows the government to set modes or methods for encryption. Okay, well, controlling encryption is fairly restrictive. I could see that as yellow or potentially red. Section 8 limits methods of circumventing encryption that are clearly disproportionate or prejudicial. Okay, so Okay, so this would be a limit on law enforcement. Circumventing encryption, limiting methods to circumvent encryption would be a restriction on law enforcement. So we wouldn't expect to see that in red. This one is for green. This one doesn't really make sense. Provides service providers must ensure the secrecy inherent in telecommunications services. That's saying that telecommunications providers must uphold confidentiality, but doesn't really, it's not, I don't think this one makes sense. So the only one that's left is this one. I don't know if the Information Technology Act 2000 is, I can't quite remember. But this one is very restrictive. This kind of is tickling at the back of my brain like that might be correct. Like this is a real act. I haven't had to think about Indian telecommunication law in a long time. A lot of the ISC squared certifications we also teach, those focus on, they don't focus so much on India. They focus on like Japan, other Southeast Asian countries. I think that one's an act. I think that's a real act, though. Okay, let's go to South Africa. I'm going to make my best guess here. South Africa, Article 5 guarantees secrecy of electronic correspondence and data is inviolable except by court order. Now, this is a yellow one. This means this could go either way, but this is guaranteeing personal freedoms. I would say that would be a green assessment. So let's not, I don't think that would be it. Article 25 provides that service providers must ensure the secrecy inherent in telecommunication services. That's the same one as this one, but this says Article 52. They just switched the 2 and the 5. Okay, so I really don't think that either Article 25 or Article 52 are legitimate, just because they switched the 2 and the 5 here. Article 25 and Article 52. So I think those are both red herrings. CompTIA, I'll tell you, some of these questions they have, it's a little silly sometimes. Okay, cryptography providers must be registered, but only a judge can approve a decryption direction. That's intriguing. Higher penalty for crimes committed using encryption. It's pretty basic. That it could be either one of these. Anybody have any thoughts? I don't really want to. Now this is a 50-50, I would say. I don't think it's this one. I don't think it's this one. Let's go with this one. Okay, Pakistan. Okay, so now we have the unique law. So that's going to give us a clue as to what the assessment is. Now, Pakistan, I can tell you, has very restrictive laws. So I can assume this is going to be very restrictive. Pakistan Telecommunication Authority requires prior approval for using a VPN service. Yeah, the government really likes to restrict access, and they like to control what their citizens can view. So I could just tell you right now, just my knowledge of Pakistan, it's going to be red. I don't know about Ecuador, though. I don't think I've ever had to think about Ecuador, but let's see if we can figure it out based on the unique law or policy. Hello, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining for the session. Okay. Service providers comply with court orders to decrypt info, but legal safeguards exist. No registration. Service providers comply with court orders to decrypt info. Well, that's pretty standard. Almost every country does that. Even if green, Canada does that too. But legal safeguards exist. No registration. I mean, that seems to me that's leaning more towards green. Because this is pretty standard. Most countries, no country is going to completely exclude their their judicial branch from being able to investigate internet activity. So I would say that's green. That seems pretty clear to me. Okay. Let's go down to the rest of these. Clients may require what type of contract to guarantee privacy services with the VPN company? Okay, well, that's going to be SLA. Service level agreement. Okay, so here we go. So we have our acronyms. You got to know your acronyms, of course, especially for CASP. Interconnection Service Agreement, Memorandum of Understanding, Master Service Agreement, Non-Disclosure Agreement, and Service Level Agreement. Now, any cloud service provider, if your clients are going to negotiate a service level agreement with the cloud service provider. We know that. Okay. A VPN company and government entity may use what type of contract to ensure the government can retrieve data when necessary. Now this, if it didn't say data, I would say this would be a memorandum of understanding. But since it specifically says data, that's probably going to be an interconnection service agreement. Because the interconnection service agreement will establish the protocols, the ports, the communication channels designed to share that data. So that's going to be an ISA, I think. A government entity will commonly require a company to preserve electronically stored information, ESI, with what type of notification protocol? This should be a legal hold. A legal hold is used to place a restriction on data stored with a cloud service provider. And a VPN would be a form of cloud service. Do care, due diligence, e-discovery, export control, legal hold, yeah. The rest of these don't really make sense. That's a simple one. Which country should the company expand services to? Well, we can say it's going to either be Ecuador, Canada, or Algeria. Let's look at the criteria. Criteria for expansion. The cost to travel to the country is reasonable, inexpensive fares. There is minimal government control over VPN services. There is no limit on encryption strength for VPNs. Okay, so let's see if there's encryption strength restrictions. Laws provide description to decrypt. Okay, there's no laws to restrict the encryption there, or in Canada, or in Ecuador. Is it going to come down to fares? What does fares mean? Are we taking a bus? Are we taking a plane? I mean, you take a bus to Ecuador, it's going to cost a lot more than it's going to take a plane. I'm going to assume they want to say Canada. Well, let's see. Is Algeria or Ecuador on here? Algeria is on here. I mean, I'm going to assume they want Canada because Canada borders the United States. If Ecuador was on here and you're based in Miami, I mean, I would say that fares to Ecuador would be pretty cheap. That's a weird one. I don't think it's going to be in Algeria because, obviously it's in Africa. But I mean, what if your service provider is in Miami and then you're trying to expand to Vancouver? Is the fare going to be cheaper going to Algeria or is it going to be go to Vancouver? This one's, I'm pretty sure CompTIA wants us to. I'm going to stop griping about the question and guess Canada. I think it's probably Canada. All right, let's see how we did. We got one or two. This one I'm not sure of, and then the 50-50. This one, I don't think. No. This one, I'm not sure of. All right. Okay. All right, great. So we did it. Let's read this here. Okay. Canada's green assessment implies minimal government restrictions and laws for encryption. The most appropriate statement representing its status would include a charter that states that everyone has a right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizures. Yep, we know that just from our knowledge of Canada law. Algeria's green assessment implies minimal government restrictions and laws for encryption. The appropriate statement representing its status would include laws that contain provisions to decrypt data when subject to judicial authorization for criminal activity. Okay, I'm not going to read all of these. I'll let you pause this if you want to read these. Red implies widespread restrictions. We understand that. Yep, India's... Okay, so this is a real act. Information Technology Act 2000. That is correct. Let's see. So that is correct on South Africa. I wasn't sure about that one. Yeah, I know Pakistan's very restrictive. They're very controlling of their government communications. Note for Pakistan and Iran. Notes for Ecuador indicate green assessment status. Okay. I didn't know much about Ecuador. The rest of these are pretty self-explanatory. What do they say about Canada? As the ISSO, you would recommend Canada as the next place to expand services. Canada meets the following criteria. Canada is closer to the United States than Algeria and would be cheaper to fly to when doing business. Now, that's arguable. We don't have any metrics for that. That one. No, I don't like that one. I don't like that, CompTIA. That is, you don't give us any information on it. You're just making an assumption that Canada flights are cheap. Should we pull up Expedia and take a look? I don't know. I'm tempted to. Canada has very little government control over encryption for use in VPN services, and Canada has, I mean, the last two criteria were correct, but it was a toss-up there just because, CompTIA is a U.S. company. They're going to pick Canada. Anyway, all right, I hope that was helpful for you guys. That was a pretty tough one. If you get this one, you get a question like this and you're not sure of all the answers, don't panic. Try the thought process I laid out for you here. Go through it one step at a time. And I hope this was very helpful to learn this question. Now, if you're looking for CAS Plus service or CAS Plus certification, check out my CAS Plus course. I have one running every 2 months. And when you enroll with us, enroll with Cyberkraft, you take my course, you're guaranteed to pass the first time. Your enrollment includes exam voucher, includes a first time pass guarantee, and you're going to get all the CompTIA materials, you're going to get all these practice materials, the labs, everything you need to pass the exam on the first try. You also have a self-paced course that includes the official CompTIA materials and our videos. You can get 36 hours of CAS Plus videos. If you like my teaching style, check out those videos. Check out the course link in the description. There's a discount code for you there too. I hope this is helpful for you guys. Thanks so much for joining in.